welcome to the channel and back to the series cataloguing the pre-Roman Celtic tribes of ancient Britannia and Hibernia. Today we're looking at the Atrebates tribe of southern England, roughly the area of Sussex, one of the more prominent and certainly wealthy tribes of pre-Roman Britain, with a distinctly continental flair to them. Not to mention they had a significant role in the Roman invasion. Before we get started on them, I just want to take a second to say that this is a sponsored video by my sponsor, Relentless Rebels, who are linked in the description below. They specialise in Viking style jewellery, which if you like Celts, you might like Vikings, so check them out. If there's anything you like, use the code NERD20, all in capitals, to get a 20% discount on anything that you purchase. With that said, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and let's get started on this video on the Atrebates. Now let's begin with what we know about the origins of the Atrebates. They were a tribe that was believed to be related to a Belgic tribe from the Artois regions of what is now modern Belgium, also called the Atrebates. They were subjugated by Julius Caesar in the 1st century BC. It's believed the two tribes were related, but what isn't clear is which way it went. Did the Atrebates spread north from the continent into Britannia, or south from Britannia into the continent? Either is technically possible, but it is more likely that the tribe from Belgium was the ancestral tribe of the one in Britain. That's more likely, as many tribes in Britain had continental relations. So it's more likely that way around, but it's not 100%, as everything from the murky period of prehistory is a little hard to exactly define. The tribe was a very wealthy and powerful tribe which were known to export slaves, hunting dogs, as well as fine clothing and materials to the continent and throughout the Roman Empire in later periods actually. But even in the pre-Roman period, they were one of the main trading partners. They saw the Roman conquest of Gaul as a greater trading opportunity for them. And to a degree, it's their fault that the Romans invaded Britain in the first place. The Romans were kind of looking for an excuse to invade Britannia, but as much as they are often seen as the unstoppable march of imperial conquest, the Romans still had to justify the things that they did to the greater population of the empire. And simply invading a foreign land because you feel like it, especially because the Romans were not a particularly good naval power and Britannia was something of a mystery to them, and the tribes had previously basically, to a degree, defeated Julius Caesar, although not outright, it was a sort of lingering memory with the Romans that the Britons were perhaps a little fierce, and they had a reputation for being very dangerous and worshipping very dark and mysterious gods, etc. So there was a lot of fear involved. The Atrebates had been allies and trading partners with the Romans for about 100 years by the 1st century AD, but they were coming under threat from the Cativaloni tribe to their north. Now the Cativaloni were basically the British superpower at the time. They were an incredibly violent and expansionistic tribe that put the other tribes such as the Debuni and the Trinovantes and others a little under their thumb. It may not have been direct rule, but they basically were running the show in southern England, and the Atrebates didn't like it. So Caraticus, or Caradog, as I may be mispronouncing that, was putting more pressure on them. They then reached out to the Romans asking for aid in their defense, as the Atrebates were not a particularly warlike tribe and didn't have much in the way of a warrior corps like the Cativaloni did, nor the military resources to sustain such a conflict. So the Romans used this as an excuse to invade Britannia. The Atrebates became willing members of the Roman Empire rather than a conquered subject people of it, a sort of client state. The Romans basically, as I've said before, Britannia was not a unified country. Each tribe was its own little nation state, and the Romans had to treat each one individually. The Debuni had to be subjugated, so did the Silures and the Ordovici. Eventually, so did many other tribes, such as the Iceni, who initially also joined with the Romans, as did the Trinovantes. But the Cativaloni opposed them and they had to be subjugated. The Atrebates again had to just integrate it. The Canti had to be subjugated. It varied from tribe to tribe. Rather than presenting a unified front, each tribe kind of made its own decision as to how they were going to deal with these foreign invaders. Some joined them, some opposed them, some were kind of neutral, and one way or another ended up part of the empire. Now, because they were being threatened, they asked for the Romans to come in and give them military aid, and that led to the conquest of Britannia by the Romans over the next 40 years or so. Interesting things about the Atrebates: they were actually one of the earliest British tribes to start using coinage. Again, something the Romans are credited for introducing to Britain, but didn't really. In fact, up till about 500 BC, there are known to be sort of these little rings that, if I can find a picture of them, I'll put it up, and they were used as a form of currency in Iron Age Britain, the pre-Roman period. And then they evolved into coinage as they became more familiar with the Romans and the Greeks and others. As the Romans were not actually the first people to visit Britannia, it was actually the Greeks. They also did, there's plenty of evidence for trade with the Phoenicians as well, possibly even the Carthaginians. So this was not a new concept to them. The concept of currency was maybe a little alien, but by the 1st century BC it was becoming more and more commonplace, with many tribes such as the Iceni even stamping their name on it with the recognizable words Iceni wrote on the coins, as they'd begun to adopt the Roman alphabet to a degree already by this time. The Atrebates also had their own coinage. It just made things easier for integration with the Romans by this point. They also sent a lot of their sort of higher born children off for education in Rome. This all helped pave the way for the Romans' long plan for the conquest and subjugation of Britannia, which was thought to be a difficult task because of the ferocity and stubbornness of the tribes. So they found another way, which was sort of the carrot and the stick. They decided to use the carrot first. For 100 years they kind of placated Britannia. The Atrebates also, although there are many documented settlements, one of their major settlements was known as Caliva Atrebatum. This was the civitas or tribal capital of the Atrebates. It's modern-day Silchester, but actually its exact location is now effectively one of Britain's relatively rare, completely lost cities. We know where it is, but it's got intact forum, it's got other intact Roman buildings, and relatively, well, I say intact, the footprints of them are relatively intact, and they're on the surface, when like it's usual typical British grubby archaeology, it's just rocks in the dirt and you got it in shapes that you have to try and figure out. These are actual stone built. Also, the buildings themselves were an interesting fusion in the early days of Celtic engineering and Roman, with a Roman street layout, but still using this the Celtic idea of the sun rising to the east and flooding into the buildings. They also, when they've done, as I recently read, and I can't remember where I read this, but they did a sort of graphic reconstruction of the town and found out that the layout of the buildings was designed to channel the wind away from all the front doors of the houses, so the wind would channel down the roads in a certain direction away from the buildings. The level of that was Roman technology, clearly not Iron Age Britannia, as the British tended to build wherever they felt like. There was not really much in the way of town planning before the Romans turned up. But this fusion of styles, they still many times had roundhouses in these, but they just built them out of stone and basically evolved the technology. The Atrebates tribe is one of the more, for me, more interesting and sort of enigmatic tribes in British history. They were both, in my opinion, a traitor, because there's no way of cutting it. You want to be a pro-Roman historian, that's fine, but from a British point of view, they were an enemy. They were invaders, and for all intents and purposes, despite not being a unified state, the Atrebates effectively betrayed their own kin, and that act of inviting the Romans in led to the downfall of Celtic society throughout most of Britain, and the extermination and eradication of their religion and way of life in the form of the destruction of the Druids, who were keepers of Celtic culture, which is something, the extermination of the Druids by the Romans is something I'll explore in a future video. And I will do more of an exploration as well when lockdown is over, because as I'm recording this, it's March 2021, lockdown's still in effect. I'd like to go to Caliva Atrebatum and actually do a video dedicated to that settlement, as I think it's very interesting. And in future I'll do more of a breakdown on some of the known historical figures of the Atrebates, which I'm not really going to touch on in this video, because this is more of an overview of who the tribe were and how they, in a sense, led to the Romanization of England and Wales by the Romans. Even though certain amongst the Camero, which I think I'm pronouncing correctly, Celtic culture did survive in Wales, it didn't in anywhere really in England other than in Cornwall, Land's End kind of area. And moving on from that, that's basically what we have. There are the Atrebates, a fascinating and maybe, in my opinion, perhaps a little short-sighted tribe. They basically, from my point of view, looking back on it, picked the wrong side in that conflict. Maybe if they hadn't have invited the Romans, maybe if they'd have worked with the Cativaloni, even though they were enemies, the Romans, to me, represented a greater threat to their national identity and their cultural, historical identities. The Atrebates may have been quite violent, and I will do a video on them, it's on my list relatively soon, but at least they were pushing towards a greater level of unification. They'd effectively almost unified all of southern England under them, and they'd kept it that way for generations. Given more time, Britannia may have gone the way of Germania, eventually unifying into a state anyway without Roman help. But c'est la vie. That's the way the cookie crumbles. History's already written. We'll never really know. But, as I said, there we have it, the Atrebates tribe. Let me know in the comments below what you know about them. And please check out my sponsor, Relentless Rebels, and remember the promo code NERD20, all in capitals, to get a discount if there's anything you would like from their website. Tell me anything I've missed about the Atrebates. Bear in mind, I am going to do more breakdowns about them because of their proximity to the Romans. We do know a little bit more about this tribe than we do about, say, some of the others. So, let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Bye-bye.